Why should anyone tell their lived experience story? It's an interesting question that I was asked today, why I share my lived experience story. And it's kind of interesting because I've never really articulated it specifically why I tell my story. So, what I want to do is I want to um, talk about, or essentially talk to people that are considering telling their lived experience story and why it's been such a good thing for me. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's dive in and see what happens. Welcome to Shattered the Podcast. STP is the story of my journey from the depths of mental illness to a place where I could live again. Okay, so the lived experience story. It's a very abstract concept when you have a mental illness because your first inclination is to hide. Your first inclination is to keep it to yourself, keep it private, make sure that as few people as possible know anything about your situation, particularly your pain, your struggles, your symptoms, that sort of thing. So to come outright and say, you know what, I'm going to start telling my story can be, well, tough and inexplicable. Like, why would you do that? Why would you allow yourself to, first of all, expose your pain to others? And why would you whinge to others? Well, here's a couple of preconceptions that I want to knock out of the water. When I tell my lived experience story, it is not to make people feel sorry for me. Yeah, bad things have happened in my life. Bad things have happened to me. My symptoms have taken me to some very, very dark places. But I never want anyone to feel sorry for me, to feel like I am needing their sympathy or am trying to curry their sense of, outrage at what I'd been through. Why I tell my story is essentially this. I want people to not make the same mistakes that I made. I want people to understand that I live with a mental illness, but it's not who I am. It's been a bump in the road. And sure, it was Mount Kosciuszko or Mount Kilimanjaro, or, it was massive. And it was something that was very, very difficult to get through, but it was not my destination. It's not where my life has ended. So to say that my life is about mental illness is, I guess, a correct statement. It's something that I kind of focus on because I want to help other people, but it's not who I am as a person. The other powerful thing that telling my lived experience story did for me is, and it's an anecdote that I've told a couple of times, but it's whenever you go to a doctor, to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist, to a counselor, you need to tell them stuff to get things that you need. You need to get healthy. You may need medication. Might need a mental health plan. You have to delve into your pain deep and hard to let that person know exactly what it is that you need. Now, the problem with that is you have absolutely no control over your story. You have to tell the parts that they need to hear. And it's not necessarily what you want to say. Because, I believe that I re traumatized myself so many times by having to repeat my story to so many different people so often that I hated thinking about my story, particularly when I was going from doctor to doctor. And, because I was injured in the workplace, I had to do all the return to work stuff. So I went and, I was telling basically strangers the deepest, darkest things about my life because I had to. When I started telling my lived experience story, when I started doing the things that I needed to do to tell people what, what my story was, I needed to make sure that it was my story, and slowly over time, it did become my story. I stay away from the parts that traumatize me or give me anxiety. I lean into the parts that I feel are important. And if there is a subject that I don't want to broach on a particular day or time, I don't do it. So if I know that it's going to be something that I'm going to have trouble getting through on a particular day, I don't tell that part of the story because I don't need to. I don't have to. Now, what has telling my lived experience story done for me? Basically, it's helped me understand a lot better who I actually am. Over the years, I've told my story in many different formats and in many different ways. And I've been fortunate to be able to speak at a number of places, hundreds of places, to tell my story in different ways. And the thing is, my story has evolved and developed. And it's also interesting when I look back at what I would tell in the beginning and the way that I would tell it and the lessons that I learned at that time. And then I come back to it and go, oh, okay, I see. And I've been able to track my journey to wellness. Let's call it that. I don't like calling it recovery. I don't like calling it, normal. It's none of those things. It's just getting to a place where I can live a productive life. And I credit telling my lived experience story as being hugely important to that. And it's allowed me to learn more about myself. It's allowed me to track my progress a lot better. It has helped me in so many different ways. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to have the opportunity to do that. That I would encourage anybody, if you have the chance to develop your own lived experience story, whether that be in your own writing, your own poetry, whether it be talking to people, um, whatever your avenue is to tell your lived experience story, I encourage you to do it. It's helped me be a lot better version of myself. And it's helped me heal, not completely, but in places that I never thought I would be able to. I don't know whether it's built a scab over some of those places, a scar, so that when I touch it, I know that it's there, but I don't feel the pain. I don't know if repetition has been part of that key, but for me, it's just been able to own my own story. That is what has been the most important thing for me and the most helpful thing. So, if you have the opportunity to tell your lived experience story, I encourage you to do so. Like I said, even if it's just in a personal diary, something that you can come back to, something that you can look back on and go, you know what? I love that that was my story. And, part and parcel of that is this podcast used to be the Shattered podcast. And when I first started the Shattered podcast, that's who I was. I was shattered. I was in pieces. I no longer feel like that. That's why it's marked my words now. Mark MI, mental illness words. It's me talking about my own mental illness from a place of not health or healing or wholeness, but it's from a place of reconstructed, um, a reconstructed psyche, a reconstructed person, a person that's been able to pull himself back together with a lot of help. But I've been able to pull myself to a place where I can say that I am living life again. That has been the power of lived experience in my life. And I hope if you have the opportunity to share your lived experience story that you will do so for just those reasons. I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Apparently, I'm supposed to say that over and over again. I just can't bring myself to do it. Seems very self serving. But, if there's somebody out there that you could think might be able to use the help, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you. I will speak to you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Mark My Words. I'd like to thank my producer, Meredith Brosnan, and also Torian, Kevin, and Lorraine. And I can't forget the band Adelaide, who allows us to use their song as our theme.